Let's take a look at some of this morning's front pages you're waking up to. In the Times, the Prime Minister declares jihad chants are a threat to British democracy. That's on the front of the Times. The Telegraph says that EU leaders have backed a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, setting up a clash with the UK and the USA. And the front page of the Mirror, and why will no one help us, asked the Mirror, as families affected by flooding caused by Storm Babette reveal that they feel abandoned.
Well, former Labour advisor James Schneider and journalist Ella Whelan are with us to look through this morning's papers. Good morning, both. How are you doing?
Good morning. Very
Morning,
well.
gang.
Good. We're going to
see you.
start with the front page of the Daily Mail, James.
Yes, so the war in Israel-Palestine is taking place also through our media, and PR is a big part of that, because part of how the war is being framed determines what can happen on the battlefield. So part of Israel's narrative is to present the other side as being savage and barbaric because of the savagery and barbarism of some of Hamas's atrocities. And this, the purpose, as you were hearing from your previous guest, is to present the Palestinian people full stop as having ideas in their head that are wrong and ideas in their head that are necessarily anti-Semitic, as opposed to being an oppressed people who, like all oppressed peoples, deserve freedom and dignity. And the reason why it matters for the battlefield, as you just said, we're talking about the front pages with the Telegraph, is Israel requires its Western backers to give it effectively carte blanche to carry on the bombing campaign of Gaza. And they have that from the US and the UK, who are standing full square behind the war crimes that are being committed. But now the EU is starting to wobble a little bit and is calling for a humanitarian pause so that more humanitarian aid can get through.
Ella?
That's not how I read the story in the Mail. It's reflecting on some of the content of what was shown in the press conference yesterday in relation to the, well, essentially what's described as sort of semi-Holocaust denial by Israel of people who have been questioning the validity of claims about, for example, beheadings, killings of babies, things that are almost too awful to mention. The Mail goes into detail of some of the transcript of what Hamas fighters, attackers were saying after they committed the atrocities, calling up their mothers and saying, "Mum, I'm such a great hero, I've killed 15 Jews today." So I think the reason we have to ask the question of, one, why Israel felt that it had to hold that press conference. Every journalist will defend scepticism and proper, due diligence in relation to appraising evidence. That's sacrosanct and has to continue. But there is something different that happened in relation to some of our response to the claims about, for example, the beheadings of babies. There was something about the sort of, show us the evidence before we believe, that was particular to this being a crime that was committed against Jewish people that I think we should interrogate. I think there's something there where, there's lots of people who've talked about this, but there's something about our, particularly for those of us on the left, a sort of willful blindness or unwillingness to jump for solidarity when it comes to crimes committed against Jewish people. And I think that is, the questions about Palestinian democracy, sovereignty, absolutely relevant. I think the story in the Mail is picking up on our particular blindness around this issue.
What's the answer to this then, in terms of, you saying that there will be PR exercises on both sides, is to really separate Hamas from the people of Gaza?
How'd you do that?
I think the thing to do is always seek truth from facts and not fall into things like this is savages against civilization, or if you're saying something which is parroting the PR line of, for example,
I
there's
don't
an
want
advert.
to argue because it's Tuesday morning, but you made the point. What happened to the Jewish people, not the Israelis? And we talked about this before. That initial attack by Hamas, that was pure savagery. That was pure terrorism. That was a heinous set of crimes. Now, I get, actually, and I had that conversation with Inet just now, I don't think anybody with a brain cell in their head wants to sit here and imagine what the hell is about to unfold. I would say that the Israelis have warned of strikes. I don't sit here and want a war, but I absolutely will sit here and understand how the Jewish people in this country and across the world feel that the very essence of what happened 3 weeks ago, James, was Holocaust-like, and is threatening the very ethos of who they are and where they came from. I'm not into revenge, but something has to be done to take Hamas out. That's all I'm saying.
OK. Using language Israel has, so you're permitted to use it like Holocaust-like, is not helpful and scares Jewish people. That's what it's designed to do. That when people talk about existential threat and so on and so forth, it's playing on.
But you're saying that about the language.
Jeremy,
she just said that you were talking about. They were bragging about taking out Jews. We're not talking about Israelis. We're talking about Jewish people, right? Are we talking about Jewish people or Israeli people?
Well, in this case, both. They're Jewish Israelis. But again, let's try to follow the facts. There were terrible atrocities that were committed.
Yep.
These terrible atrocities, 1,400 people killed, many of them civilians, is not comparable to 6 million Jews, most of European Jewry, being wiped out in World War II. And it is not a sign that that is what is about to befall us. That is not what it means. So it's building up this idea that we have this total existential threat and therefore anything goes. And my point as a Jewish person is my safety and security is not contingent on killing more Palestinian babies. In fact, it's the other way around. It is very much the other way around. Because let's say Gaza is completely flattened. Already more than 1 in 20 buildings have been flattened. Let's say half the buildings are flattened. Let's say all the buildings are flattened. Let's say every single person associated with Hamas is killed. Am I going to be safer? Will there be another organisation that springs up afterwards? Yes, there will.
I'll tell you what